My name is Melanie Richards. For those who don't know me, I'm the owner and founder of Happy Tree Yoga Studio in Montreal. And we're very, very fortunate to be bringing in David Behrens, who is a leading expert in mindfulness. If I can go on your bio to give a quick introduction to people, that you have more than 40 years experience of teaching meditation and mindfulness. You were a monk for 27 years, is that right?
Yes.
And you've been working for the last 12 years with doctors, psychologists, psychotherapists, and in leading medical clinics in London, working in treatment centers, working with the National Health Service. And so we would be benefiting from all of this rich experience when talking about these masterclasses, the one on the Saturday, November 6th, being let me just get it, mindfulness in mental health and trauma. And then the second one on the Sunday, November 7th, and this is all online, so it's accessible around the world. Harmonizing the Nervous System, Restoring Vitality Through Ancient Energy Practices, and the Modern Polyvagal Theory. I think trauma is really a hot topic right now. We're talking about, you know, individual and collective trauma. A lot of people are describing that we're in a traumatized world. There's intergenerational trauma, all these things. So there is a very strong likelihood that people are either experiencing it personally, or, you know, if they are yoga teachers, mindfulness teachers, that there are people who are going to show up in their classes that are experiencing or have experienced trauma, that even people in their places of work, you know, whether it's in schools, hospitals, also we need to be a trauma-informed society. So could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your experience? I touched on it a little bit, but just so people here in Montreal get to know you and around the world.
Thank you so much. So my background, as it was just shared, I did become a monk at a young age. I got involved with spirituality when I was 18, focusing a lot on yoga. It's so interesting. Everybody has, for whatever reason, sometimes when you're young, you have a particular direction. And sometimes it happens later in life. But for me, it happened at a younger age. I was interested in the Eastern traditions and spirituality and yoga. And even while I was in university and college, I was interested, so much so that I actually, things began to kind of move in that direction. And as a result, I actually left home when I was 19. And I met a great spiritual master. Has a whole fun story in itself, which maybe I'll just tell a little, not now, save it for a time when we have more time. And yeah, I left home, I left university, and I began studying formally with a great master of meditation and yoga. And within a few years, I felt that it was my calling, and I decided to become a monk, and I asked for permission. It was a whole process, and I became a monk. And then there was 27 years living as a monk. It was a traditional Eastern approach, a lot of study, a lot of practice, but it also was a beautiful way where whatever the monk's skills were, that's where you were placed within the organization. And I always was a very sort of talkative person, and I love to take care of people, and I love learning about health. So I learned about Ayurvedic medicine, and I studied with a lot of great Ayurvedic masters who used to come to where I was a monk. And it was learning it through the window of mysticism, deep spirituality, yoga philosophy, and the Eastern scriptures. But at the same time, being a busy person too, meaning we had a lot of responsibility. So it was a nice combination, not on top of a mountain that was not really my path. The mountain on top was inside. And then I transitioned out of my monkhood.
Right.
And, you know, some people in their whole life's destiny, my story began when I was very young. And then it was taking all that learning and then applying that term household life.
Mm.
And I'm no longer a monk. I was a monk for 27 years. I still do all my practices. And then it was, in my story, it was taking all those skills and learning and deep understanding and applying it. I always had a wish to help people. And I had a certain amount of skills as a monk, and then it was learning how to apply it. It naturally happened in a clinical therapeutic setting. And I began that journey of studying and learning, and a lot of doors opened up. A lot of good things happened in England. And before I knew it, I was able to learn and practice and build that skill. And then it was working for the NHS, doctors, psychiatrists, and learning from them, but also applying it. And out of all of that, I found there was this beautiful synergy between what has been taught for thousands of years and how it is still today, and even more so, it applies. There's so much synergy now between modern psychology, and we can even say modern medicine, which is now called functional medicine, the cutting edge. And so I'll be offering sort of these cutting edge understandings without it being too complicated. Sometimes I thought, my goodness, I'm going to have to go and get a doctorate and go back to school for 12 years, but I decided it would be better to practice and better to kind of learn. I've always learned through experience. I've always learned sort of hands-on, and that continued. So I was very lucky. I got to learn how to apply meditation, mindfulness. And in a sense, the first one is on mindfulness. This is our first, you can say, a 6-hour masterclass in mental health and trauma. And as it was shared, we are in a world that there's this enormous amount of collective trauma. Our whole world, for many of us, has been turned upside down. And now it's not quite back. We can't say it's back on our feet. We might say it's still sort of, you can ask yourself, do you feel everything's back to normal? And we used to hear that saying, we now have the new normal.
Right.
But what is the new normal? So we have to, each person has to learn how to take care of oneself and also take care of others. And trauma, I was sharing just before that there's also a thing called secondary trauma. So even if you haven't suffered with intense trauma through things that have happened to you, but you receive it just by being in the company of others. And it's called secondary trauma, where you have some of those symptoms and I found that all you have to do is hear the story, 100 stories of people with challenging mental health, and there is always something that happened which is related to trauma. You can't separate the two.
I love that, because you came into our 300-hour training, and that's how I got to know you, through Barry Risman. And the title of our weekend with you on trauma sensitivity was Untangling the Web of Trauma, Mental Health, and Addiction. And I can say from my own experience, my own family, that it's absolutely true. They don't live in silos. They're all interconnected. So you'll be speaking to that, I think, more in the first, on the Saturday.
We'll also get a window, especially Saturday, on what actually is the parameters if we want to understand healthy mental health and mental health when it loses its ability. And I found a very beautiful way of understanding that, which has helped me, a framework where we will be studying 4 functions of the brain, which makes it really scientific, really psychological on a deep level. It's based upon the cutting edge of that. And then we're really going to go into, as much as we can, into the practice. So at the end of it, we will get the foundational principles of mindfulness and how to apply it even a little bit, but also how to begin to develop it within ourselves. And of course, that term mindfulness is now being used in so many ways. I teach in schools. I've worked, and mindfulness now is in hospitals. It's for pain management. Mindfulness is in the top places for leadership training, but it's also being used now in the top clinics for treatment, whether it's addiction or mental health. So it'll be a way so we could get a big picture view of mental health. So if we're facing it and we're in a role of a teacher, or we're in a role of supporting someone else. So this masterclass is not just for Hatha Yoga teachers.
Yeah, that's
we
good to
won't
know.
say it's really for anyone who wants a window into it, but it will apply beautifully for the Hatha Yoga teacher, for a nurse, or for a parent wanting to get a deeper understanding of possibly how it's for their own children and for themselves, because so much of which I'll talk about in both, what you understand and how you are directly supports the other person who has trauma.
Wow.
That is, now it's being taught. The therapist now has to sit in the seat of taking care of, and that's where the second one comes in, his or her own nervous system, because our nervous system, it's like almost like how a tuning fork, whoever we're with will feel it. This is now proven.
Incredible.
And it's now being applied. They're even teaching, because soon I think you're probably going to ask me about the Polyvagal Theory and why we used all those terms.
Right. Yeah, being able to regulate, so learning to regulate our own nervous system is such an integral part of helping other people going through trauma, or to regulate their nervous system. So yeah, sure. Tell us a little bit about the Polyvagal Theory, because I think what we want people to know is that, of course, you can Google Polyvagal Theory, that this workshop is going to be so much more than just explaining that. Of course, it's a basis for understanding it in modern times. And what you're bringing that's going to be very valuable is all the energetic aspect, and why it's important to have physical practices, right? To not just understand it intellectually. I know that's been important for my learning.
They are understanding now that when a person suffers or has been affected by trauma, literally a part of the brain that hears words begins to shut down.
Wow.
So you will talk until you're blue in the face, and it will not really be that much service, especially if the person is suffering from trauma.
Wow. That's an aha moment for me.
This is now becoming almost like a big educational, it's now called psycho education, where they teach you. They now are including the client and the patient to be taught, not just to be treated. So they have to understand these things. And of course, before you can even do that, sometimes it's going to be all about you, your state. If you are settled in yourself, in your voice, in your own nervous system, in your own mental patterns, in your body, all those levels, it will be probably the most important thing in the relationship between you and your client, patient, or student.
Wow.
The number one thing
that's
they've now
huge.
discovered. It's huge because it puts a big responsibility.
That's it.
Onus.
Self-responsibility, and it like the importance of having our own practice and self-care and looking after ourselves.
Absolutely. They're really, because and they're actually beginning to offer this to police, to people who go into emergency services, because they're hands-on with someone who might not be able to hear anything you're saying because that part of the brain has shut down. Wow. So they're actually reteaching people who didn't know and might have even been doing things making it worse. Now, and this is the same thing in our relationship to others, whether we are playing the role of a caretaker, playing the role of a parent, playing the role of a teacher, playing the role of a Hatha Yoga teacher, playing the role of a therapist or a nurse, or just day-to-day life. with our
Sure.
friends who might be
All
suffering,
relationships,
or
right?
relationship.
Yeah.
And of course, so we're going to focus a lot in the second one. There will be mindfulness skills, but we're also going to look at a few of the other traditions, because these other traditions are so powerful because they have been taught for thousands of years, whether it's the Taoist tradition or the tradition of yoga, how to work with the breath, how to work with the
So
chi
valuable.
energy, how to work with the, we use that term prana, which is not just the breath, it's sort of the energy. And also, how to work, just with our posture. So, Hatha
Just straighten up.
yogis play a major role. But the tricky thing is, in trauma, it's not just about strengthening up. It's more about you're truly settled in yourself. And the Polyvagal Theory is so wonderful. It's made it almost, I won't say simple, but it made it easy to understand. And that's why when I began to study it and learn about it, I loved it as a model. It'll be such an easy model to then apply it for oneself and others. And then you of course, will be doing a lot of practice. So we will learn. And of course, in 6 hours, it'll be a nice balance of practice, reflection, and learning, sort of the nuggets of the sort of the really important themes. You could study for years and years and years and years, but in the end, you have to learn the principal themes.
Right.
And that
you
goes
boil
with
it down.
Yeah.
To really the nuggets that are the most important for people to come away with.
Yeah. So we will focus in that way.
That's wonderful.
And
so really, it's very, very valuable in terms of not just the knowledge, but the practices. And for people who are maybe not sure about practicing online because it's a lot of time in front of a screen, they will get those practices. So there will be times where, I guess you'll be guiding them through these different practices.
Definitely.
And looking at the screen. Yeah.
Everyone will come away with the themes and enough to feel that I would say their own practice and whatever they're doing will be altered.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll also
and enough introduction to enough various practices that maybe they find, oh, that one really worked for me, and then they can incorporate that daily, and have it and see the effect on themselves and their own nervous system, so they benefit from it, and then other people benefit from it, I imagine.
And open the door to continue their study.
Yeah, for sure.
Open the door.
Because you have a lot of references to and places they can go from there. And you also do private one-on-one sessions, which I'm going to be doing with you.
Thank you. And that's where I work. I've had a lot of beautiful experiences working with different individuals. Mm-hmm. And I found that it has to be, everybody's a little different. Mm-hmm. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has different things that happen to them. And also everybody experiences the world uniquely. And how their senses work, how their nervous system work, how their mind patterns work. So we have to, when we do work with individuals and trying to help them, there's certain principles that will work for everyone. It's like a base foundation. And then we build on it to make it more subtle and refined. I can give one simple base foundation. One is everyone you would want to create feeling safe.
Yes. So important. I just gave an advanced yin training last weekend, and there was a whole class around that exploring the edge and moving out of your comfort zone actually requires you to be safe first. So a lot of the practices were around feeling safe.
Because when you feel safe, you're at your optimum in the sense of receptivity.
Right.
And then you also are not putting up your defenses and your blocks and your compensation. and your repression and all that stuff.
Right.
And from that, a lot of learning takes place. The good learning.
Yeah. And so I know you're very good at creating a safe space, even or a safer space, even online for people. And maybe just we can start wrapping up the conversation to look at. There's 2 different days. There's again mindfulness in mental health and mental health in trauma. And then the second day on November 7th, the Sunday, is harmonizing the nervous system, restoring vitality through ancient energy practices and the modern polyvagal theory. Both are available for sale on Happy Tree's platform, so you can access it through happytreeyoga.com or onlinecourses.happytreeyoga.com. If you are interested in both days, once you purchase one day, you automatically get $50 off the second day. Now, maybe you could just say again, if people did want to choose or were curious about, what the difference is between the Saturday and the Sunday, maybe we can just
I can summarize it quickly. I would say the first one, of course, will give a really strong, clear, simple, open window into understanding mental health and its relationship to trauma, and especially the foundational practices of mindfulness that we will do.
Great.
And practice. So people will come out of that with a deeper understanding of how to develop that practice as a meditation and as a hands-on way in daily life, and how that supports mental health for themselves and trauma and others, and then find ways in whatever they do to apply it.
Nice. And you'll talk a little bit also about where that fits into traditional models of
well, I'll also be sharing
psychology.
How the different models I learned, the way a psychiatrist or a psychotherapist would work in a very simple way.
Okay.
Because
Great.
sometimes we need just a simple model windows, and many of us are not aware of it unless we're in that field. So
Sure.
that'll be like a special thing, because not all of us are ready to go in the field or take tons of courses and do years of study.
But
so
it's important information for everyone to have.
We have
right?
to
And
have
that's
this.
that's why we opened it up. Originally this was really going to be just for yoga teachers, and then the more we spoke, the more like, no, we need to really open this up to the general public, because this is information that is invaluable for every individual and in relationship with others.
Yeah, we
everyone.
need to know this for ourselves too, because in helping another person, we have to be simultaneously building and helping our own development in that area.
For sure. And that brings you to the second day.
The second day is very beautiful, because it's looking at trauma, which is so much. It's not just one little thing, but through the window, we say the Polyvagal Theory, because it's such a perfect model to describe the nervous system and how it affects our life. So much so that they say that the nervous system is first and then the mind changes.
Wow.
As opposed to people think it's your mind, then your nervous system, but they're almost saying we see the world, nervous system, then the mind, how you see the world changes. Incredible. So how do we work with it? It's basically, what can we do? And how can we recognize in others when they need help, and what to do and what not to do? And then there's so many ancient practices that have been there for thousands of years in yoga and Taoism and mindfulness and meditation that are so helpful. So we'll learn how to apply that and how to practice that. But sometimes it's also how to become intuitive to our own flow and experience of inner energy, which is, we can say, our life force. We all have it, but we haven't gained the lens to be aware of it or gain the tools to work with it. So we'll learn a lot of the cutting edge practices and what's being now brought into the world about that as much as we can without getting overwhelmed. I'll try to make just that perfect balance so we come away with enough and a lot, but we don't overeat. But we
Yeah,
get
we'll
fully
save
nourished.
some. Maybe we'll do a part 2, hopefully in the new year. But for now, this is
No,
such a
it'll be
strong
a
base for
really good
people.
start.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you might want to zero in and really go further in things because, wow, that really hit the spot.
Yeah.
That's very
Yeah. So
empowering.
empowerment that's the big thing, right? Like, what can you do for within yourself, and to empower others as well. And I think just so anybody who's interested in these topics are welcome to come, are welcome to be there, and you will get that solid foundation. So again, we really invite you warmly. Again, thank you so much for your time, David. It's just been such a pleasure getting to know you, and the work that you do, I think, is invaluable. So head over to happytreeyoga.com or onlinecourses.happytreeyoga.com. It'll all lead you to the same place, and check out those 2 masterclasses happening on the first weekend of November online. We've broken up the day to make it manageable. It'll be 2 6-hour days of time very well spent with David Behrens on some topics that are extremely timely, and that I think the world needs more than ever. So thank you for your time, David.
Pleasure.
And
hope to see many of you there.
Yeah, definitely. And don't be shy to reach out if you have extra questions.
Yeah,
Thank
please.
you very much.
Everyone, take care.